As a tech reviewer, bias is something we're always trying to fight against. We have preconceived notions going into any sort of testing, but our job is to push those to the side and review a product objectively. I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit. When the iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus were announced, I was not excited about it. I didn't think it was anything revolutionary or giantly new, and I expected to be overwhelmingly disappointed with the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus. But in my 5 days of testing, I've actually been pleasantly surprised with what Apple has done here. So I'm going to talk about the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus. It's a review for both devices, and I'm going to try to not talk about the iPhone 10 and focus on these devices as they exist on their own. Let's get started. For me, one of the most appealing things about Apple products in the past has always been the design and the look and feel. And this is a very familiar design for an iPhone. It's the fourth iteration of the same design that we saw with the iPhone 6. When you flip the devices over though, it's an entirely different story. These things look much different than the press photos or maybe hands-on videos led you to believe. Apple has no uniform color for space gray at all. This version around is almost a dark gray, and I love the way these colors look. The silver is kind of an eggshell white. The gold is now a more muted gold. All three colors here look drastically different and I think very much improved over their namesakes from last generation. The glass backs make the phone feel pretty different as well. If you've held a modern Samsung device, if you've held an S8 or a Note 8, you're gonna know what that glass back feels like. A lot of people like it. I'm one of those. If you get the darker color, it's gonna be a fingerprint magnet, and it can make it a little bit slippery. So if you wanna sort of protect that, you can put a dbrand skin on the back of it. Link to them down below. At long last, wireless charging is here, and maybe you don't care about wireless charging, but for me it is a giant deal, and I am so happy that it is here, and I give Apple credit for using the Qi standard, not going with some weird proprietary Apple-only wireless charging. I've got the Samsung quick charger I use with my Note 8, put this on it, and it worked immediately, which is really nice to have. I will say though, the charging rate was definitely slower than most modern wireless charging capable Android devices I've tested. But for me, I put it on at night, turn off the phone, wake up in the morning, and it's charged. So for that use case, wireless charging works and works as advertised. So I mentioned at the beginning, I was surprised by the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. I've primarily been using the Plus for my testing, and battery life has been way better than I thought I could have, not only on a mobile device, but on an iPhone in particular. By the end of the day, I'm generally at 55 to 60% battery life left, and that is a staggering number for me, and about 20% higher than what I'm at with almost any other phone, including when I was with the iPhone 7 Plus. But if you're traveling, got a day trip, you almost don't have to bring your charger. If you put on battery saving mode and you turn off some apps, or you turn down your screen brightness, you might be able to push it to 2.5, 3 days. Hats off to Apple for making a phone with pretty damn good battery life, but it's not something I get a chance to say very often. Performance here is really fast. Now, with performance, it might be a little bit psychosomatic. I know we've seen the Geekbench scores and it's crazy fast off the charts, so it seemed fast to me, but the things I noticed that I can quantify, boot up is stupid fast now on the iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus. Apps open definitely faster on the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus versus previous gen phones. Everything else just felt zippier to me. I never felt that iPhones were slow, by stretch of the imagination, but it handles iOS 11 smoothly. I can multitask without any problem, or at least how Apple allows you to multitask without any problems. Games work really quickly. The phone is just quick, and it's probably going to be very quick continuing into the 12, 18 to perhaps 24 months that you might have this phone. Screen. There are two schools of thought when it comes to Apple's Apple screen. You're like, I don't mind 1080p for battery life, and why can't I get a high-res screen on the iPhone 8 Plus? I think that I'm maybe somewhere in the middle. I don't want to be a hypocrite and say battery life is awesome, but it should have a higher res screen, because I know there'd be a trade-off there. But as far as 1080p screens go, it looks good. It doesn't look best in class anymore, I think, by any stretch of the imagination. It is above average, though, in direct sunlight. Which is odd because it's not the brightest screen in the world, but you can definitely see it when you go out. And if that trade-off for battery life is important to you, you're going to be fine with the screen. If you've been sort of longingly looking at Android phones with 2K and higher resolution screens, then you might be disappointed here. But know that going in, the screen's fine, it's serviceable, it works well, it's just not the best anymore in the business. So True Tone is a new addition to the 8 and the 8 Plus. It mattered like between 0 and next to 0 to me. I guess you only notice it when you have another phone next to it that doesn't have True Tone, but it really didn't impact my impressions on the screen at all here. Cameras are perhaps the biggest reason people choose phones generation over generation. And if you look at just a spec sheet between the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus versus the last gen, and in fact, we did a versus video comparing the two, you might think they are identical. Same megapixelage, same apertures, but that is not the full story at all, especially when it comes to the 8 Plus. This is an instance where the processor makes all the difference. These cameras are incredible. In direct sunlight, photos look beautiful. They're not as saturated as you get with the Samsung phones. The color reproduction is more true to real life. In low light, they were great. The shutter speed is incredibly fast. The video capture looks great. I like still having the 2x optical zoom. I very rarely use the 10x digital, but it's there if you need it. Portrait mode we had with the last gen with the iPhone 7 Plus. It's here as well, but now it processes that portrait mode way faster than the 7 Plus. So portrait lighting is also here on the 8 Plus. And that was a cool, almost like a cool party trick. I liked trying it. I had inconsistent results, but when it worked really well. And we've done some portrait lighting for our headshots here at the office, and they looked pretty close. I'll forgive inconsistencies though, since it is definitely still in beta, but it does come damn close to working exactly as advertised. I get a lot of questions in our reviews on the speakers on the phones. So I'll run through this really quickly. The speakers are actually pretty good, about 25% louder than we have for the last gen. They don't sound as tinny as the iPhone 7 Plus. They sound loud, they sound fine. They're on the higher end of average when it comes to phone speakers. So another instance where I was surprised was actually when it came to storage. So these phones ship either 64 or 256, which are big size discrepancies. And you probably, like me, think you need the larger size. I set up my iPhone 8 Plus from scratch, and I haven't done that in probably the past 5 gens of phones. And I was shocked when I set the phone up from scratch and I had all of my photos backed up in the cloud. I was using less than 18 gigs of storage. Apple's got a new file system with iOS 11. I'm sure that plays a big part of it. You might want to even consider that 64 gigs for the $699 or $799, depending if you go for the 8 or the 8 Plus. You might not need as much as you think, but obviously your use may vary. But I think I would be completely fine with the 64. I never thought I would say that. So if you can't tell, I came away impressed with the iPhone 8 and the 8 Plus, and I didn't think I was going to. There's a lot of little things that make up a really nice whole when it comes to the phone. I like the way it feels. I like the speed. The speakers are surprising. Coming back to iOS has been a nice experience. It was kind of a welcome home. I still wish a lot of things would change, but the OS still is what it is. It's still the grid array of icons. And if you like that, or if you're okay with that, this is the best implementation of it, quite obviously. Now there's the specter of what's coming next from Apple, what the iPhone 10 is going to be, but this phone, as it exists in the market, is still a really good choice. It brings it up to close to parity with the features and specs that Android has, and that's what a lot of Apple aficionados and a lot of Apple fans have been asking for. You've got things like wireless charging, you've got water resistance here, and it just works out of the box. And for a lot of people, that is the ideal mobile experience. And I might be one of those folks again. So that's my take on the 8 and the 8 Plus. But what matters is what you do and what you do with your wallet. Are you spending your hard-earned money towards an 8 or an 8 Plus? Are you waiting for the iPhone 10? Are you switching to Android? Let us know why down below.